Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maivi and I am a climate change specialist. Also, I am a book enthusiast. So I welcome you to this series that I'm doing in which I talk about the books nominated for the Climate Fiction Prize. Today, however, we have a bit of a different type of video, and I'm just gonna go ahead and come clean and tell you how this video came to be. So a few days ago, I recorded a video about the second book that I read from the long list to the Climate Fiction Prize, which is The Ministry of Time. That video was an attempt at a vlog in which I recorded a first part while I was halfway through and then recorded another part once I finished the book. And one of the topics that this book refers to is the topic of migration. It refers to this topic over and over again, but I would say in hindsight, it's not one of the main, it's not the core topic of this book. However, when I was halfway through the book and I tried to make a video about what this book was about, the topic of migration is of course something that is very relevant for me as a climate expert, but also as a migrant myself. So I kind of addressed the topic and I discussed the topic in as much depth as possible within a very short period of time. And the thing is that when I went to edit that video, I got the impression that as a commentary for just an aspect of this book, it was perhaps too long and too deep. And the other thing that happened is that since I finished reading The Ministry of Time, I started reading another book from the long list, which is Briefly Very Beautiful. And this book again refers much more directly to the topic of climate migration. So what I realized is, okay, this is actually a topic that will very likely be quite reiterative in many of these stories. So this is something that will probably be common to many of the books within this long list. So long story short, what I decided to do is to cut this part out of the original video and made it as a standalone video to which I can refer to whenever a book that I read about climate change, which are many of the books that I read beyond this particular project with the Climate Fiction Prize. Whenever a book addresses this topic, this will be a standalone video to which I can refer to. And so I think that's it as an introduction. You're now going to see me again dressed in a different way, and I hope you can forgive this Frankenstein of a video that I'm trying to do here. Without further ado, I leave you with what's coming next. In the context of talking about climate migration, I want to take a step back and talk about general concepts related to migration. So very basic, we all should understand a migrant is a person that moves from a country to another, that will move from the country they're from to a new country to start a new life, or at least temporarily. An immigrant is the person that arrives to a country. So from the perspective of the country that you arrive, if I put myself as an example, I am an immigrant in the UK. If I think from the perspective of the country that I come from, which is Argentina, I am an emigrant from this country. So regardless of who you are, why you came, and the consequences and the circumstances that brought you to a new country, we are all immigrants. But then we do a distinction between the type of immigrant or type of migrant that you are based on the circumstances that led you to that decision, to that action of moving, basically. So the first one would be if you are a migrant by choice. If you have migrated by choice, we find that these people refer themselves as expats, or they will be referred to as expats. This is a term that doesn't have that much stigma. And when we're talking about someone that is an expat, frequently we kind of think that they migrated out of choice, and that basically there is a possibility for them to go back home anytime. They came from another country and they have just as many opportunities, so they're here out of choice and they can go back if they ever choose to do so. The second type of migrant that we find is if we take that expat and we kind of remove a little bit of agency. We then have the economic migrant, which is my case. I consider myself to be an economic migrant. These are people who they are not running away from disaster, they're not running away from war, they're not being prosecuted because of who they are, because of their identities, or because of their opinions, but perhaps they live in countries where there are severe and never-ending economic crises. Perhaps they live in a country where they just cannot find opportunities to explore their full potential. In my case particularly, I was never able to work in my profession. I tried a lot of things. I studied back home. I studied really, really hard. But then I literally spent years looking for a job without being able to find one, mainly due to discriminatory attitudes towards me, due to my age and my gender. And I could have stayed and I would have survived. But staying meant for me that I had to give up on many of my dreams and my hopes, both in a personal and professional capacity. So that prompted me to leave my country and go somewhere else where there would be more opportunities for me. There's also the case of people who might not be professionals, but they are essential workers. But there is a difference. Being an essential worker in a poor country, sometimes you don't really have enough to cover your very, very basic needs, while being an essential worker in a country with more economic affluence and more opportunities, it means that you can live a decent life. And sometimes that's all you want. And finally, if we take a migrant and we kind of strip them of agency, you have the third type of migration, which is forced displacement. This is, there is no choice here. You are literally running away. You're not choosing this. And you're running away due to circumstances that are completely out of your control. So it might be that you are running away from war because your country is at war with another country, or there is civil war, or there is another type of armed conflict that is affecting you, that you are in physical danger of being killed, you and your family. Or it might be that you live in a country in which you are persecuted due to your identity, your gender identity, or your sexual orientation, or perhaps you are being persecuted due to your opinions of the government that is in charge of your country, and you are in danger of being thrown into jail or torture or worse. So of course you're running away. Now, climate migrants, they are a very new category, but they do fall under this category of forced displacement. And this is the case of people, for example, that are farmers and they live in a place where the climate has changed, and now it's completely dominated by floods or droughts, and they can't grow food. They lost their livelihoods, so they need to go elsewhere. Or we might be talking about people who have lost everything due to a natural disaster that has been made worse due to climate change. And there is confusing terminology that I very often see misused, particularly when I hear speeches that are against this type of migration, this type of people. So let's just strip it back and let's make clear what are we talking about when we use specific terms. So let's talk about climate migration. When we see someone that is literally running away, that is literally trying to reach a place of safety, that person is called an asylum seeker. When we see people trying to arrive, trying to enter, trying to cross with boats to another country, they are looking for safety, they are looking for refuge, they are asylum seekers. Once they entered a country and they requested asylum, they requested to have refuge in this country, and when that request is granted, then they become refugees. They are people who have the rights to live because the government has granted them asylum. They have the right to live in the place and to work in the place, and they are just another citizen pretty much with the same rights. So in this case, I want to make the distinction between legal migration and illegal migration, because I hear this used wrong all the time. So if you want to migrate legally, you basically need to follow the law. And there are ways to do this with a visa. You can request from outside the country. You can request a visa. You can go through a process, and you can be granted permission to enter the country when you are outside, and then you will enter the country through that legal route. I'm afraid to say this is extremely difficult to achieve. It's really limited, the number of visas, and it's very, very restrictive to very specific people that meet very specific criteria. So this is not feasible for a lot of people, especially people who are running away and who are on the run, looking for safety, literally. And then you have people who have not gone through the process because they're running away and maybe they don't even have a laptop, and they arrive to a country, and once they are in the country, they request asylum. This is also legal. Under international law, the action of arriving to a country, to whatever country, and requesting asylum, it is completely legal. And you get to choose what country that is. You're not obligated to request asylum in the first country that you reach when you leave yours. So when we're talking about people coming in to request asylum, that is not illegal migration. That is still legal. We're talking about illegal migration whenever there is someone who doesn't have a visa, doesn't have a permit, they're not requesting asylum, and they come here and they want to live and work as a citizen without permission from the government. But that can be anyone. It's not necessarily someone that is coming from a vulnerable background. And I would say we better have these conversations more, and we better get used to this idea, because climate change is increasing dramatically, this phenomena. And according to the IPCC and also according to the World Bank, by 2050, the number of climate refugees is expected to reach 143 million people. And these are people that need a place to go. So if we're not going to stop climate change, if we're not going to take radical action to stop climate change and to protect the lands where those people live and their livelihoods, they won't have any other choice than running away and requesting asylum elsewhere. So this is the crucial role that climate fiction has in bringing us closer to these realities of things that are currently happening all around the world and things that potentially could affect us or our loved ones down the line in a relatively near future. I think that's the pivotal role that climate fiction has. So thank you very much if you watched this far. Again, I have other videos that you can refer to specifically see the reviews and the analysis of these different books nominated for the Climate Fiction Prize, these 9 amazing novels. I hope you're doing well. Please subscribe if you're interested in this topic. Like, comment, everything helps. I really hope to see you next time. Bye bye.